music stopped.
All right.
Yep.
I think we are ready to begin. I want to thank everybody for coming. This panel is called, very originally, Contained Chaos, which, I have to admit, could be the title of any panel here at PAX, I think. But this is the one we chose.
Life.
Yeah. And it's about managing communities for live games. I'm Gabriel Graziani. I am a community developer at Ubisoft. I'm currently working on Transference, Starlink, and Star Trek Bridge Crew. But I want to get right into introducing our panelists here. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. Why don't you go ahead and begin, sir?
Hey guys, I'm Justin Kruger. I'm the community developer on Rainbow Six Siege. And I've been working at Ubisoft for about 4.5 years, and I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Oh, good crowd work.
Yeah, there we go.
I was going to
Awesome.
wear Red Sox
Yeah.
jersey just.
My name's Stephanie. I work at Blizzard Entertainment. I work on Heroes of the Storm. So I am the manager of community development for the North America region. I've been at Blizzard only for a little while, but I've been in games like over 15 years, doing a bunch of shit. So wait, we can cuss in this panel, right?
Yeah.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Why not?
It's
I don't
unavoidable.
know. I don't know if people are gonna be cool with it or not, but I just wanted to do a check. But yeah, so I've been in games for a long time, and I'm very, very excited to see all these wonderful, happy faces.
Shout out, who here's from North America?
Woo! Yeah. That's the crowd work that we needed, Eric. That's good. That's good crowd work.
My name's Eric Pope. I am a community developer at Ubisoft with these two gentlemen. This is not a Ubisoft panel.
We swear.
It just sort of
happened.
shook out that
Yeah.
way. I work on For Honor, which is another live game of Ubisoft's. Anyone here play For Honor? 2, 3, 4. Good.
Just lie and say
You got a
yes.
few of them.
No, there's a bunch. Great, thank you for being here. So I used to work at Harmonix for 8 years or so on Rock Band, Dance Central, all sorts of weird music games that were less successful. So I'm happy to be back in Boston. And that's me. And that's my terrible picture.
I know, I love it so
Right,
much.
it's me.
You're so beefy, Eric.
It's fantastic.
You're so beefy.
You're so beautiful.
Beautiful. And I am Rebecca Ford. I work at Digital Extremes on Warframe, and I've been there for 7. I just got a hand raise. That's cool. I'm from Canada, so yeah. And yeah, that's it.
I like the I'm from Canada.
Yeah, there is how they cheered. I think so. Sweet. Thanks, guys. Sweet.
So what we're here to talk about today are live games, and to give you an idea of what those are, because it's kind of a new term. Live games are games with ongoing development. So those are games that have regular patches or updates to address issues with the game. They also have post-launch content updates, so like DLC or regular updates of content, so more missions, more characters, things like that, and a feedback loop with the game community. And part of the reason that I reached out to our panelists today was because I feel like they are all at the head of games that have really caught fire, especially this year. It seems like we've seen the creation of a live ecosystem where games are constantly evolving. So I think what I wanted to start off with is just a very broad question, which is, what strategies do you employ to gather player feedback? Because as we have that feedback loop, that's probably the place that we deal the most with our games. So we'll go ahead and start with you again, Justin.
Reddit. I love Reddit. It is my favorite place in the world.
Justin has a very black soul.
I love the hatred. No, I mean, it's where people speak real, have real feedback. It's real emotion at times where a lot of people can voice a similar opinion and contribute to that opinion in many different ways by even just doing an upvote, and that's a way of providing us feedback, an upvote or a retweet or a favorite. I mean, any kind of those actions on social media or whatever platform where you are providing feedback is really important, because that shows to us that you guys really care about this thing. Like, this is something that you really, really are so passionate about. And when we see some post that has like 3,000 upvotes, that's certainly a signal that you guys care about that. So obviously, that's one of the best ways that best platforms that I go to for providing feedback.
Well, I'd have to say, so Reddit is definitely something for us that we do focus on a lot, just because, you know, it's a platform that pretty much everybody's on. So between social media and Reddit, one of the things that we also do within Blizzard is we have some specific email lists where it'll go out to the whole dev team, and they're categorized by like feedback and stuff like that. Specifically like, hey, we found these threads. Hey, this is a way to bump it, and it's in your email inbox, and you can start to read it. And then a lot of times what it'll do is like it'll get classified, so we can like, hey, is this something that needs to be addressed quicker? Is this something that's like general content feedback that, you know, we can try to like add to the development calendar to try to update? But it's also like part of the first line of defense of, hey, if something has gone batshit wrong, like, hey, this is the first place that we'll see it. People will let us know, and then we immediately tell the team, like, hey, we need to address this. But it is one of those things that's important that the internet is available to everyone, and I always want to be like, hey, please be constructive with what you're trying to say. Like, and like, you can say that something sucks, but tell us why it sucks, because if you just say it sucks and we don't know how to fix it, what are we gonna do?
Tell us what would make it suck less.
Yeah, like what about it sucks, because then that's actionable. And especially like, community is very, very important at Blizzard, and I don't think that people realize how much of our dev team totally like reads Reddit and is paying attention to that stuff. Besides just the community team, who of course naturally lives within it, like the dev teams for sure are always in there, always trying to see like how can they make things better, because they want people to be super into the products that they're making.
Yeah, when I get in the morning, the people who have been at work earlier than me, who are not in the community team, have already sent me a number of threads like, well, you got to read this one, you got to respond to this one, what are they saying here? So yeah, our dev team is also very much on Reddit as well, for better or worse. So because everyone's already talked about Reddit, I won't, but that's obviously a huge one for us too. One thing we do a lot on For Honor is in terms of feedback. We fly players to the studio every couple of months to do really intensive workshops. We're doing one next week, a 5-day long one, which I'm 5 days. And it's very, you know, it's balance focused, because competitive games, you have to put a lot of work on balance. So, you know, it's not a lot of community topics. It's very focused on fight balance and stuff. And those have led to a lot of really cool things for us as a team. So we'll do those workshops, and then we've been using Discord a lot. We use a private Discord server with everyone who's attended a workshop, because they sign NDAs when they come, non-disclosure agreements, so they can see content that's not out and give us early feedback on it. So then the next step is using this private Discord. We have tons of our designers in there who kind of use them as a sounding board, like, this is what we're doing, this is what's coming up, this is what we're thinking of doing, and they get feedback. And then the even newest step in that that I'm really excited about is we have a thing called Rift, Rapid Iteration Fight Testing. So we actually give those guys builds, early unreleased builds, to test changes, give us feedback in the private Discord. It's an amazing feedback loop where it just connects our devs to our players directly. And I kind of don't have to do much, which is great. That's been huge for us.
That's awesome. I feel like I can just like start a PowerPoint. I'm like, we do all those things too, and we love it just as much. Because yeah, like between like really like high impact Reddit posts that get attention quickly, that are, you know, go high. You can do forums, you can do Discords, you can do targeted NDA groups. We do all that, and we also have like really good players of our game that happen to be on Twitch and YouTube. So you're like, hey, you who just made this video, can you tell us a bit more about that? And you just try and make like a big summary of what the sort of more people that are broadcasting their experiences. If they're streaming it live, we can actually engage live on Twitch and say, okay, well, why don't you try doing this? And then you have an audience there as well to give feedback. So you just kind of take everything and give it to the devs over and over again across all these channels. And, you know, it sounds like we all kind of have this life where the devs just so truly love making the game they're making, and we're there just to work with the community to make it as awesome for them as possible. So
yeah.
That can be definitely said about every single game on this panel
Yeah.
because it's, yeah, the development team, once they're integrated into these social platforms like Reddit or even in workshops, it's only good things.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally.
So let's building off of that, Rebecca, there was a superb documentary made recently by NoClip, and if you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend you look it up on YouTube about Warframe, specifically the community. So building off of this idea of gathering feedback and things like that, we talked about how we get it from the community. How does that work with delivering it to the dev team? Like, do you have any like organizational tips or anything like that?
You know, like when we say live games, it's because we're changing things frequently and we're adding things frequently. And like I love that the word issues is on there because it's so universal to everything we're making that yes, we are not perfect. We make imperfect games, and the community brings that sort of sensibility about, okay, well, here's what your issues are. So when you want to take action on something, there's sort of two ways you can do it, and we do a hybrid. One is add some science to the mix, which is, okay, so 35 people have said this has happened. Let's take a look at our stats database and try and apply a little bit of like, how bad is the problem? Or you know, you can use the tools that perhaps you have a stats team that can help you with that. Or you go solely for the bad feelings that you might have created with an issue. And that's when, if you're trying to act on that feedback, you can really just consolidate it into this is how you've made our players feel by making this choice, and we don't want our players to feel that way. So if they feel like we've made something that's pay to win, we don't want our players to feel that way. The choice X created that, so you just always want to go on the side of having a good feeling community, if that makes sense. I ramble, so I'm sorry.
Oh, no, not
Good
at all.
feelings.
Not at all.
Feelings.
That's
Let's talk
exactly
about feelings.
do any of you guys have anything else to say on that topic?
Well,
in terms of getting
just on the
developers?
basic level, we do weekly reports to the team of everything that we've gathered across all the channels of the community, you know, Steam, social, Reddit, forums, all those things. So it's a weekly snapshot of what they're talking about, what they're happy with. On ours, at least, we do a lot of their suggested game improvements and design-focused things. That gives anyone who's interested on the team a snapshot every week of what the discussion is, and that's very helpful.
That seems like a really big job. And so when we were discussing what we would talk about at this panel, Steph, you brought up the idea of when to ask for help. And I think that's something that for people that work in community and for people who are members of a community who are observing it from the outside, don't necessarily immediately acknowledge the amount of work it takes in both gathering feedback, like parsing that feedback, and then delivering it. Can you talk a little bit about when to ask for help?
Well, I'm going to be one of the people that is like the super boring, where I'm like, I like writing stuff down, and I'm always like harping on everybody to kind of track where your time is allocated and like what you're working on, like what kind of tasks are available, how much work is it really going to be. And I feel like that's my old like production side that is really thinking about that. But it really helps when you're looking at your, you know, schedule of what you're doing from, you know, like 9 to 5 every day, or I mean, 9 to 5.
That's a really good joke, Steph.
But like, you know, or your core work hours, whatever they may be, and you know that like, hey, this is a thing, like I want to be able to work on this bigger project, and it's going to be a bigger social thing, and I'm going to have other assets for it. How am I going to get this done? Like, having all of that kind of written out as to what you want to do allows you to go to, you know, your bosses or anybody else and say, okay, I'm doing all of these other things. I need help with this. I want to be able to execute something cool. I saw this other company doing this. Here's how I think it can work for us. But if you don't have it written down and it kind of just feels like you walk up to someone, you're like, yeah, I was doing all this stuff today. And they're like, oh, wait, you spent how much time reading Twitter? Or you're like, no. Like, I wrote these project plans. I did all of these things. Having that out and having it in that visual way allows you to present it and, like, talk to your bosses about it. Like, this is when we should do that. And then to, like, add on to that, because I've said before, of, like, don't ever be afraid to also reach out to like specific vendors that might want to be able to help you, or like agencies. Let them take you out to lunch. Let them give you a presentation of how they can help make your job easier and make your day go easier while also like being effective for the community, because as much as we really try to do everything all at once, we can't. And like that's how burnout happens. And I feel like the older that I get in this industry and like have worked here, that I keep wanting to tell everyone it's okay to say no to something. It's okay. But like if you have to say no, talk to your boss about it. Figure out how to like bring it up. Bring in interns, do something. But like kind of mapping it out allows you to really take like a hard look at like all the things that are on your plate and know when you're going to give, so that you can make a decision to get help before you break. Because then that's when it's like, then you feel worse and you feel bad. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that.
It's true.
And one of on our side, one of the things that I think we couldn't do what we do without is our volunteer mods. Like on our Reddit, it's all volunteer mods, and they do so much. They do so much, and they don't take part in any of our reporting or anything because that's not their job. They're literally just players who like to help manage the community. But anytime I need, like, on a specific topic, maybe a designer will be like, oh, I was thinking of doing this thing. What do you think of that? Like, oh, give me a few minutes to give you a response. I am one of the mods and be like, hey, does this seem like a good idea? No? Okay, they have, even more than our community managers, have the pulse on, because they don't filter anything. They will just tell you, that sounds stupid. Like, so I really appreciate that. Yeah, it's a very good, quick way for me to like test something out and be like, okay, I'm gonna change my plan here.
Yeah, for sure. Building a cadre of like dedicated fans who you can use as a sounding board for potential messaging or potential changes and things like that is incredibly, incredibly important. I would like now to ask, because we're dealing with such large communities, we get a lot of stories from our communities. We see a lot of things come up where, you have people who start playing your game and continue to play your game, and because they're communities, they start making relationships with other players, right? They become a part of the community and start making these connections and build networks and things like that. Justin, do you have like a story from your community that you find particularly heartwarming?
Yeah, and I mean, I think when you look at stories from the community, I think we all have like a story where video games have helped us out in a certain way. I mean, I remember as a kid feeling angry and frustrated and alone, and I used video games as a way to reach out and feel less alone, feel less sad. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about PAX East is that everybody here is here for one reason, that's the love of video games. And when you look at all of our communities, we absolutely have that feeling, that spirit ingrained in every single aspect of our community. And there are so many stories on Rainbow Six Siege where a player will be like, yeah, my dad has been playing Rainbow Six Siege for like every single day it's been out, or something like that, or my granddad, he has granddads love Siege apparently.
Any grandpas here?
There's actually
Shout out to the grandpas.
There's this one grandfather where this kid posted this story of him on the Reddit where he was like, yeah, he only plays Terrorist Hunt, and he has this book right next to him, and in the book he writes down every single name of someone who team kills in the game. And he checks it before every single match. And if he sees someone on there who has team killed before, he will alert the entire team, and it'll be like, hey, this guy's a team killer.
Wow.
Shoot this guy. And he calls it his Book of Death.
Wow.
Yeah. I love that guy. Yeah, he's amazing.
Did you reach out to him to potentially actually
We gave him. We gave.
Make it.
That would have been amazing.
tome?
Yeah, a tome that's like hanging up in Ubisoft Montreal. That would have been really cool.
With a skull on
No, we sent his granddad a T-shirt, but that was.
I'm like, all right, a T-shirt's okay.
T-shirt work, yeah.
Get a book.
But I mean, you hear of a lot of stories. Another one that we recently got. We've been doing a lot of toxicity work within the community, toxicity management and behavior management. And recently, a gay guy reached out to us. He sent an email saying that he has felt incredibly marginalized in video games because he is gay, and he said that he was playing with one of his friends, and he didn't realize how his other friend was so oblivious to this kind of behavior. And he said that once we started introducing this toxicity behavior that was targeting homophobic slurs and racial slurs, that he finally returned to Siege, and he said it was, it felt like coming home. And he reached out to us. He was so appreciative that he had an area where he felt like he can be a part of the community again. And that's one of the big issues in the industry right now, is how we're addressing that. And I felt like that was a really beautiful story. But he ended up just saying, I love you. That's how he finished the email, and I was really moved by that, where he was expressing love to us as like a company, as a game, as a brand, as an identity, and you don't see that often. And I was really proud of that and really appreciative of that. Wow.
Yeah. I still vote for budget for a book.
Yeah, right?
Can we crowdfund it here?
My experience at Blizzard has still been so surprising by the passion that the fan base has for all of it. This was the first year that I got to go to BlizzCon this past year, and I worked it, and it was amazing to just kind of interact with so many folks that were they're just so into it, and especially because community is so important to Blizzard. We have special jackets that we wear that are denote who we are, and I was telling this to Gabe yesterday that I was like, oh yeah, I had my jacket on. I was in the middle of trying to do it. We had a Probius. We built a real life Probius that you could control with an Xbox controller, and that was my first job at BlizzCon was to have that little probe going around the show floor so people could take photos, and you could live stream. And I was just trying to get the live stream to work because it was in the middle of HGC matches and the finals, and just internet was just failing me, and I was frustrated and sitting there, and then some guy came up to me. He's like, hey, and I'm like, what? Forgetting, because I'm it's not working, and he's like, I wanted to tell you that I really love Heroes of the Storm, it's so great. And I was like, Oh, the chat. Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I was trying to fix something. I'm kind of in it to win it here, dude. I'm so appreciative. I'm sorry. And I've that's a thing that I feel is the most fortunate, that people can come up. They feel so comfortable. You're available to them, and I've been fortunate in a lot of the games that I've worked on over the years that I've had some really great interactions. And I don't mean to bring the party down, but one super memorable experience that I had was when I was at PopCap and I was working on Bejeweled Blitz, and this was the days of Facebook gaming, and I was a community manager for all of Bejeweled franchise. And this one woman wrote me and told me about how she was in the middle of chemo and she was going through these treatments, and that she would be in pain randomly in the middle of the night. But she's like, I love Bejeweled Blitz so much. It's just a minute where at least I'm not thinking about the pain that I'm going through. And I was sitting at my desk crying and being like, you can't do this to me. You can't do this to me. And I've never forgotten that I'm look, even a game that is a minute round and it was so meaningful and impactful, it puts a lot of things into perspective, and was still very treasured. But I've also helped people now get married through the game. Man, we love that. If you, anybody think about getting married or making
You don't want to
thing?
propose today? No?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I think my old boss married a dwarf paladin from New Hampshire.
Oh, I'm also available to officiate weddings. I'm going to tell you. Yeah, no. I totally. Yeah, when in California when it was gay marriage, and I was I will officiate any wedding. I will wear whatever outfit you want me to. I could dress like Elvis. I mean, I'm good with sideburns, I'm just saying. But
I would imagine you already own an Elvis costume, don't you?
No, I don't.
Come on.
That's a surprise.
That is a surprise.
I try to be the most rockabilly in gaming, but I don't yet. Anyway, yes.
So there's a story that I became aware of. It was like written up in a UK paper. There's this guy in the UK. He's originally from Sudan. He's a lost boy from Sudan. I don't know if you know that story. Basically, thousands and thousands, basically a whole generation of children in Sudan had to walk across the desert and escape the country because of genocide. And they ended up everywhere. There's a community here in Boston. When I used to live here, I worked with. They're amazing people. Anyway, he ended up in London. He saw his parents killed, all those things. So lots and lots and lots of heavy stuff in his life. And he's turned that into good. He works with that. He works with depression and things like that. Anyway, it turns out he plays a lot of For Honor. And he would play regularly with this other fellow in the UK, to the point where they played so regularly, like they never met, they just knew each other through the game. And the other guy kind of noticed he was off one day, and he's like, hey man, are you doing okay? I guess he had been very close that day to committing suicide because, he's had a hard life. And so he was having a particularly bad day. He had kind of planned things out, and this just fellow For Honor player just started talking to him, talked him back, kept him, brought him back to the light side, and he survived, and that ended up getting written about. And like that is such an amazing thing that through a game where you're hacking each other's heads off, those sorts of interactions can happen. Like I said, they never met each other in person. They would just play regularly. So I'm super happy that things like that can happen. We're bringing that guy to E3. Because I want to meet him.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
I pulled every string I could. I was
yeah.
like, I just want to meet this guy. Can we bring him to E3? So
You're gonna make me like I'm already feeling like this is so beautiful. Like, God damn it.
yeah.
You better send him more than a shirt. I'm gonna keep getting.
We definitely want
I
up the
want
shirt.
that man to get a book. I really want a
All
book.
right, Steph.
I'm sorry. I'm not gonna let it go.
Yeah, everyone's getting like extra stuff now because you're going to be like on it. Like, listen,
I have great merch ideas.
we got plenty. We're going to make it all happen here. I just remember like there's of course like we granted our first wish last year for a kid who his wonderful Edward. He was going through chemo and he just really wanted like some digital stuff for a digital game. And then we were just on the cusp of releasing Plains of Eidolon, and we're like, we're bringing it to you first. So we went and visited him and brought him the dev build, and he got to play it before anyone, and that was super cool.
That's so cool.
And then I think anytime we get physical mail, there's always an amazing story behind it because like we love tweets, we love emails, and every now and then you just get a letter in your PO box or something. And we had one that was like, "Do not open until Zephyr Prime," which is like this character we're releasing. And like I knew it was in a month, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to open it. So I just kept it there. Then the day she released, we like opened it and read it, and it was just like a passionate player who had just like loved this character, loved our game, and just took the time to write us this handwritten note about really how much the community and everything had meant to them. So it's just games are the best, guys.
Yeah.
Like we're
Yeah.
like honestly, everything
agree.
is so amazing here. Like,
I know. I'm like Gabe's, but I want to talk about so we have a wall at Blizzard, like in our office building that I particularly, there's like 900 buildings. It's a huge campus. But in the building I work in, there's a huge wall, and we pin up all the like little kids' art and stuff that gets sent,
nice.
which is like
man.
5-year-olds drawing Tracer with like bullets coming. I was like,
hell yeah.
I'm like, it's really cute
You could
though.
sell a kid fan art book for charity or something. Merch ideas, just things.
And there was like cross stitch that kids have sent in, and like all these like different stuff. And so we try to put it up because then that way it's
So
just like
containing chaos is about cross stitches and like getting it all up. It's-
Containing chaos. The chaos part is actually just all the fan mail that
Exactly.
it's all the kids' beautiful, adorable
It's like our
drawings.
game's rated M. It's fine. You can send in your grade 2 drawing. It's cool.
It's
Yeah,
really
we're
those heartwarming stories, I think, that keep us going.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because there is so much other stuff that, like you mentioned, burnout. I think I don't know about the people on this panel, but almost every community manager I've talked to in the industry that has been doing it for more than maybe 4 or 5 years has at least one story of burnout, because it's so intense to kind of, if you know UHF, be drinking from the fire hose.
Yes.
Because it's just that much feedback all the time and unfiltered most of the time can eventually
Very unfiltered.
can eventually erode you no matter how strong you are. So those good things really balance it out.
Words hurt. even community managers, for community managers.
That is such a good segue, you guys. It's like
Oh.
we talked about this before. because when I asked everybody, like, okay, so let's get some questions together and stuff like that, like we had some contributions. And one of the ones that Rebecca had contributed was that we all have a story that is not as positive. We all have that story of that one Reddit thread. And so I wanted to dig into those stories next.
Oh, this is where
Let's start with Rebecca.
I'll start. That's fine.
It's your question.
That's fine. It was my question. That's true. All right, because I think like
You did this.
I did. I am so sorry. You are totally good to opt out of this one. But it's just because obviously there is a side to containing chaos where things go bad very quickly, and it's typically because of a decision you or what you represent has made. So whether it's a balanced choice or whether it's a item acquisition, and if that goes the wrong way, then people can get reasonably upset, and that's fine. That's a part of the relationship, respecting and dealing with upset players. But then there's sometimes malice behind it, you know, or personal attacks. And I think the thing I have the most difficulty with, and when it comes to that thread, is when people attack the people that make the game itself. Like, I'm okay if you are talking about the fiction and the choices and the company as a whole, but sometimes I see threads go to the top of places. I see tweets to our creative director or design director saying, like, you, like, just the personal attacks. And there's one example that I won't speak exactly of, but just to see an individual who I know, and I try to always show that they care so much about what they're doing, become the enemy due to a design choice is very hard for people at the company, and I think in the community too, because the bandwagon effect of such communication, and it just can get really ugly really quickly, because no one has ever done anything at our company out of malice to the community, but sometimes it seems that way if things go out of control to personal attacks to people.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So maybe a better question to build off of that, so that.
Sorry.
No.
Did I not answer my own
That was a
question?
fantastic answer.
Sorry.
Well, I sense some uncomfortability from the other panelists.
No.
Oh, no?
I have a great
All right, let's hear
story.
it then.
Yeah.
Jump on in.
Let's get in this. Kate.
Jump on in.
Come
All right.
on.
The water's warm.
Well, see, because it's not about like my current role. This is something that happened years ago. Once again, it was Bejeweled. Let me tell you.
These jewelers.
And because
That Bejeweled community.
Well, it was
Feisty.
really interesting because it was like, I mean, it had a very specific demographic of like women that were aged like anywhere from like 18 to I think 55. Like that was target market, which is still like a game that I've never quite worked on like that, where like that was who we were marketing to, including still a proud moment. I somehow like Dan and Yogurt sponsored a thing that we did, and I had to somehow make that like happy hour by Dannon, take a break. I was like, I had to write copy around it. It was very weird, but I was like, it still made sense, and I did it. So, and like, this is just a warning, because this is when the bad language comes out. We were running a particular sale on coins in the game. Like, we normally had a happy hour every Friday. We're like 2 hours. You could get coins 50% off. We decided to run a different kind of sale earlier in the week. And I had a Facebook profile, a fake one, that was this, because this was the days where there weren't admins on Facebook. There wasn't, like, you had to use your personal profile, and I was like, I'm sure as fuck not going to use my personal profile. I'm going to create like a fake one that's a PopCap one that people can contact me. But this woman sent me some of the most ridiculous messages telling me that we should be raped. That like all of a sudden the thing is I could click on her picture and she was a grandma. And like there was pictures of her and her grandkids. And I was like,
What is with grandparents on this panel?
I was like, dang, I didn't know what to do. And my boss, she sent them, because my boss had a fake profile too. And he started and was getting messages from her. And he was like, oh, I blocked that bitch. Like, no. And I was like, okay, wait. I'm like, one, I'm going to walk away from this desk for a moment, because like I couldn't believe the things that she wrote. And I was like, okay, I have a choice. Do I reach out? Do I just block? So I thought, I'm going to try to reach out. And I wrote back and I said, hi, I am a person. You cannot speak to me that way. You can't, if you need help, if something's wrong, I want to know what's going on, but I need you to be respectful because I am a human being. She wrote back, well, I'm very upset. And I wrote back like, okay, well, what's going on? This sale is ridiculous.
That was the.
And I was like, and she's like, well, because normally I get my coins for 50% off, and this one only equals out to like 20% off, and I'm like,
She just wanted the yogurt.
Yeah.
Yeah?
She didn't get her Dan.
Didn't get enough that Dan.
And I was like, we're still gonna have the 50% off sale on Friday. I'm like, this is just a sale for the people that don't, buy stuff on Friday. It's still gonna be the Friday sale. Oh, you're not getting rid of it? No, nobody's getting rid. This is just a sale we're running at the beginning of the week.
Miscommunication
No.
every time is like a part of it. It's yeah.
That's what, and I'm like, is that it? Like this, nothing. Like nobody spit in your cornflakes. Like that was it. And she was like, well, yeah, I'm fine now. Like okay. And I was like, all right.
So we're gonna take back the messages earlier.
Yeah. And I was like, all right, as long as we're never like that again, I will answer your messages and it will be cool. And you know what? She actually ended up starting her own Facebook group and running like tournaments.
What?
Like it was crazy. And it's like my favorite story of like turning the ship around.
It's so
of, like,
applicable.
She was going right into like rape and fuck mountain. And I was like, no, like helping and like got her to like
I feel like there's a
switch
big
course.
untapped market for grandmas and grandpas as influencers.
Together.
Yes,
I would,
the bejeweled grandma and the siege granddad. It's perfect. It's a match made in heaven.
Oh my God, that would be like my dream. I wish I still had her information.
Yeah,
I would totally
that
get
would
them
be
together.
so adorable. I think building off on that, just by quick raise of hands, who here works in like community or video games at all? Just a raise of hands. All right.
Was I not supposed
Oh, I like
Yeah.
50%. I might. I've seen it.
That's good. And I feel like that's it's really important that you guys know that when someone on the internet says your game sucks or like this aspect of your game sucks, they're not saying that you suck.
Yeah.
They're not saying that you suck as a person. And I think for myself, I've really had to do a lot of distancing myself from brands and really, I have a high tolerance for bullshit, and that's probably why I'm really good at being a community manager, because you do have to put up with a lot of at times angry people, and I won't specifically call out like one specific time where it was really challenging or whatever, but we do. I mean, games are hard, and game companies are not always 100% aligned on every single thing they put out there with the community. So we make mistakes. It's a human aspect of our lives, of being a human rather than being a lizard person. Got it in there. Got it in there.
I'm sorry, this is a
Inside
joke.
joke.
Yeah, we're like a joke beforehand.
I have a lizard on my hand.
But
I didn't think it'd be you.
I know. I didn't think it would be me, but yeah. Sorry. Going back to being human.
Or
Busted.
are we?
It's really, I mean, when we receive a message online, a lot of times it is a frustration that players have within the game, and a lot of times if you just as part of our job, it's really just to reach out and just be like, hey, what's wrong? Like, why are you telling me to kill myself and my whole entire family should be raped, or or like everybody at our company should be laid off and fired and thrown into a dumpster and lit on fire. I was like, whoa, like
You're like,
hey,
man, somebody's got to lay off the caffeine.
Yeah,
You
it's
know?
like
Take some yoga, deep breathing,
what's the
something.
issue? And a lot of times it just breaks down to a frustration that they're having, or an aspect of the game. Like, have you ever been really frustrated with a game, or like been frustrated with like the service of a game, like been kicked offline, or
I was
like
really
servers?
mad once at Bejeweled Blitz.
Yeah. Eric, hope you're the grandma. You're the grandma. It's actually
he, like,
him. He
takes off his fuck
it- yeah.
skin.
That's the third.
Yeah, but we all know that feeling
Yeah.
of feeling frustrated, and a lot of times people, the natural outlet is to go to Twitter, or to go to Reddit or one of these platforms. And I think it was Pope or Gabe who shared a survey it was like a behavioral study
Yeah.
on. Was it Overwatch?
It was on the Overwatch.
Yeah, it was on the Overwatch Reddit. Yeah.
It was a cognitive behavioral therapy worksheet. I don't know. Did any of you see it? It was pretty big for.
It was
a day
really
on
awesome.
Reddit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's sort of
Good.
like, here's my list of feelings when I'm playing Overwatch, because this guy's wife was like a therapist. It's like, you are out of line when you play this game. So he filled it out. Here's, and then you kind of rank where that's making you feel. Here's what I would rather be feeling. Here's the reason that I felt this. And then by the end, basically by filling out the worksheet, he was like, I actually found out that I could manage my emotions a lot better playing the game.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most beautiful things about that survey or that like thing was where it was like, it ranked your emotions on a scale of like 1 to 100 or something like that. And where it was like frustrated or angry, it was like 90 and 100. And then like after like 10 minutes of just chilling out, it was like 10. And he realized, he was like, okay, yeah, maybe the healer wasn't the issue. Maybe it was my
Your
crappy
salt level?
Yeah, my salt level. Maybe it was my crappy DPS or something like that. But it's really something to keep in mind where we do feel emotion, we feel strong emotion about these games. But there is a very human element of managing that and managing that in terms of like how you approach that to a brand or a company or the person behind that brand or company.
Yeah, that's a classic thing too. Like when you respond to those people, like 9 times out of 10, they did not expect anyone to even see their message, and that you have seen it and responded. They're usually like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't actually."
Didn't know somebody was actually going to be responding.
What I really wanted to say was I was a little frustrated when this thing, and like I love it when that happens.
Yeah.
So I know kind of the common thing in our job is like, oh, don't feed the trolls. Don't feed. Sometimes I want to feed those fucking people because they're like, this is delicious, thank you. And then they're nice, and you win them over, and it happens. I think it happens more often than it doesn't happen.
Totally.
Absolutely. And I think one of the benefits of running live games to begin with is that interaction can happen much faster, and you can get that iteration. I think it's interesting, and part of the reason that I wanted to do this panel was the move to live games. There's all kinds of things that are associated with live games, like always online, and in some cases microtransactions and things like that, that people discuss, sometimes in heated tones. But I think one of the major benefits of having live games is that it's sort of the scenario that everyone has always wanted, like both developers and fans of games. You have a game that launches, and like every game that's released, it's not perfect. But you have that time now, and it's dedicated time that lasts, well beyond a year, to make the changes that need to get made and see that community grow and flourish and get exactly what they want.
Yeah, and I know for me personally, like job-wise, it's so satisfying because that feedback loop is so tight that you can regularly give devs feedback from the community and then see it fixed, implemented, changed based on that feedback within a number of months and weeks sometimes even. And that's so satisfying because that's, I think, what most of us probably want is like to make an impact on the game that benefits the community that the players want, and to actually get to see it on the regs is a really good feeling, to the point where like I don't know what it would be like going back to a more traditional release at this point in my career.
I could never do it. I've
I'd
only
be
worked
so
live.
bored.
Yeah.
Oh my
I think,
god!
like,
Are you
what's,
kidding me?
What's super beautiful about like successful live games and how everything's going is like I look at the brands that we're all representing here today, and I know that each of them supports their community over time consistently. And I think for gamers, burnout is real, right? Like if you play the same game for too long, you get frustrated at the devs because they're not keeping up with the pace you're playing, and that's fine. Like I get burned out on games all the time, but to know that they can go from game to game to game and come back and come back and come back to each one, like if they go down this list over and over again, there's always going to be something new, something changed, because we're working every day to make things better. So if they take 2 weeks off, they're going to come back and see something different, and then they take 2 weeks off from another game, play them all at the same time, and we're all doing it to support basically that community. Because like it's a beautiful thing to have like a library of awesome live games to play. So to do it with teams dedicated to solving issues and just bringing fun to the world is like.
And there are a lot of good ones out there now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So like that's really the trend, and it's really awesome. I love all the live games now. It's amazing time to be a gamer.
Yes.
Yep.
And actually, this is where I'm going to cut you guys off.
Oh, no.
Because we have
Cut
15 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we have time in case any of you have questions. We have a microphone set up right there. So feel free to stand up and ask a question to these fine
It's the most
panelists.
eager ones that stress me out the most.
Yeah, that guy, this guy jumped up. He was like, I
We
have
didn't
a
work on
question.
Bejeweled. Bejeweled.
All the Bejeweled questions go here.
Yeah.
I don't actually have a Bejeweled question, but
Damn it.
I have a question as a person who is not a lizard, who totally sleeps in a bed and not on a heat rock.
That is
Yeah.
what a lizard would
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
See, you're good. We understand you, human.
Thank you.
Yes. So, people sleep. You go home. You have a life. But a community never sleeps.
Nope.
It's constant. You know, when you sleep, Twitch chat is just going a mile a minute. Where do you draw the line? Where do you, I mean, like, Pope, you've been in the industry a long time. And where do you say, okay, and this is where I go to sleep immediately?
Since you named me, I'll start. But for me,
He could have been talking about the Pope.
oh, that's true. For me, honestly, the big thing was having kids. It's a whole paradigm shift for your life. We can do a separate panel on that. But that's when you really realize how important time is in your day and how important it is to not just work all the time. When I had left Harmonix, it was an 8-year run, and I was legit burned out. I worked on things, like, it was very frustrating in the end, and so, like, I left that place very burnt out and just vowed to never do it again, which happened to also coincide with me having 2 kids, my wife having 2 kids. I didn't have the kids.
I found some kids.
So I just
They're
sort of
human
embraced.
kids, though, right?
Actually, Steph made the joke earlier about 9 to 5, and I've actually embraced 9 to 5. Honestly, I come in at
It's a
9
way to make a living.
and
Does it get you by?
Golly.
I'll take it.
Sorry.
I'm very 5 o'clock hits, and I pretty much, my coworker Alex can attend. I'm just like out of there. I'm like, this stuff will still be here tomorrow. Because there's always going to be more work, always. So unless it's something that someone's waiting on from me and I'm late to deliver it, then I'll stay and finish it. I make a pretty strict line. And then even still, just being home at night, checking Twitter, it's like so easy to get pulled back in. And that's where I struggle to this day.
Those boundaries are really important because then you can kind of establish that the real work's going to get done between core work hours. And it's like, I'll play with you after hours. We'll talk this, but I'm off the. I think I have a copy paste of I'm off the clock right now. But when I get into work tomorrow, like if I'm into, because I play my own game after hours just because I love it. So it's like someone will be like, hey, I have this bug, and I'm like, hey, off the clock right now, but I'll make sure it gets done tomorrow. Because then I'm like, I guess I could just make a fake account, but that would violate our own terms of service, and I don't want to get fired. So.
Yeah. No, I'm like, I think that's a totally valid thing. I keep telling everybody, like, establish those boundaries and communicate it. And I think sometimes, like, you know, some teams can get a little bit worried about it, or like dev teams, where it's like, oh, it's like we don't want to seem like we're not available, and it's like it's not that. It's just that you're letting them know. By the way, I sleep. Oh, shocker! Like I go home, so it's like it's okay, but just know that we work Monday through Friday. We will be here, or we'll be doing stuff on the weekend. That's when we can be available. Establishing it helps the community know, so that way they can also kind of like regulate that too. Oh, I should send this when people are going to be available, or I could send it. We'll get to it eventually. But just communicate.
Cool.
That it? Yeah.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Hi guys, my name is Robert and I'm a university student. I apologize to Gabe because I asked you this question yesterday. But I'm someone who's really passionate about community management. I'm hoping to turn it into a career, so I was wondering if you guys had any advice of not only how to get into the industry, but also like once I'm there, like how do I be a great community manager? Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, that's a good question. And I think
That's the right people.
yeah, I think we all have weird and interesting ways of getting into the industry. I mean, for myself, what are you studying?
I go to Carleton in Ottawa.
Hey, that's Canada.
Step one.
Hello!
Step one, talk to the Canadians.
Hey,
4/5 of the people on this panel live in Canada.
oh my.
So you're on the right track.
Yeah.
You don't need to live in Canada to be a community manager. Just FYI. No, what are you studying though?
I work in like kind of like market research, but government focused.
Okay,
That's the best way
cool.
I can describe it.
Cool. So I mean, when I for myself, my degree is in environmental science, and I wasn't.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And,
that's
and
why you
like
know so much about
architecture.
salt.
Did not
And,
know.
Saltstone.
for me, it was really just like a passion. Like I just did it. I started with the gaming guild that I was a part of. It was like a MMO guild for Star Wars: The Old Republic. Yeah, a lot of nice. 2 people up here have worked on that game as well. And I was so passionate about that game. It was actually 2011 PAX East where I was just a fan, and I was waiting in line like 6 hours a day to play 30 minutes of that game. And I spoke with some of the people working on the game. I was like, how do I get in this industry? I really want to get in this industry. And they were just like, do it. You just do it. And I was like, it's like, wow.
just do it.
That is, and I was like, wow, that is really terrible advice. But what that did inspire me to do is like find out ways to do it on my own, like find out ways to do it at a community level. So like with my community gaming guild, I became like the social media manager of that and community manager of that, and I like managed the forums. I learned all the things of like BB code and all that stuff, and then I was like working in media, and I was like writing blogs and covering it on that level and doing a lot of social media. And then I started my own like social media company, and I was like, all right, this is kind of on the right track. And then I got hired by BioWare but it's really about the connections you build. And I would say that is one of the biggest, most important things, is that we're all human. We're all interact with each other. And as long as you have, you can build up a connection with someone in the industry, like at events here, like just go up to a booth that you're really passionate about and just talk with the community manager and just talk about something about that. That's really one advice that I would have. But,
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's keep going. We got a lot of questions.
Cool.
So this is sort of a question for all you guys. So I know you get like a big fire hose of information coming in, all sorts of great ideas, things to fix, but you've also got like really big development teams of like probably thousands of developers. How do you sort of like manage?
I know, it's like, I'm not laughing at you, just that idea of them all working together, maybe building a pyramid of game development. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So
Wait.
What was the question though?
so like, how do you get the ideas from the peoples to the developers in like that process?
It's going to seem really boring, but reports. That's a big thing. Like communication. So, and sometimes that's digitally via email. Sometimes it's just the reports that we provide. Sometimes for Heroes of the Storm, we have like giant team meetings that happen where basically people are presenting, hey, this is what we're working on right now. Take a look at these animations that we're doing, as a way to just kind of see like what everybody's kind of working on all at like snapshots, because then we're like, oh, if they're working on that, hey, like for community and social, we should be focusing on like how we can make sure to put that into the things that we're using for content. So it's just making sure that you're aligning everybody, scheduling like a 15-minute stand-up, like just trying to keep talking. I think that's the main way to do it. And it may seem weird when you do have like large teams, but it's really, really important to just like FaceTime, communicate digitally, and like have some just kind of reporting structure.
We're like a town crier. It's like, hear ye. Today we found the community didn't like this. Like, honestly, like that's pretty much.
That's actually a beautiful way of descriptive of our job.
Like you go to the studio, the community team's town crying in the middle, and people can come listen if they want.
Yeah, actually, that inspired me to buy a bell. I'm gonna buy a bell and walk up the dev floor. Hear ye. On Reddit today.
Exactly.
Players no longer want to pub.
Reddit.
Yeah. Then you can laugh at town criers, so it's good.
Next question.
Yeah.
All right. So I know all of you have played many games. You're gamers. Everyone here is a gamer, and you've had many different jobs in the video game industry. And this is for any of you. Is there a specific reason or thing of why you wanted to join whatever game that you are a part of as community manager for more of a live games? So did you want it specifically because it was a live game with lots of updates, or is there something passionate about that specific game that you wanted to join that company for?
I started the game we worked on, like with the team, so I was there from day one. It was sort of just like we got to do this or we're all losing our jobs. So we did it, and then we never left. We never knew it would work. We never knew live games would become what they are. It was totally just right place, right time, with people, like, as you said, that love making and playing games. So the passion foremostly. I'm super curious to that myself because I've never worked anywhere else. I've only worked at DE. So I want to know what you guys think about that too.
It definitely appealed to me, having worked on Rock Band for almost 8 years, that it was a live game for sure, even though we didn't use that word, that term, because we would release songs, DLC, every single week for, I can't remember how many weeks, I forgot.
Well, 8 years now.
Many, many weeks. And that, I already talked about it, but like that loop of just constantly having things for the community to talk about is super great. So for me, it definitely appealed For Honor.
I feel like every place that I've tried to work on for the games that I've been a part of is because like I've had an interest or want to be there. Like when I went to PopCap, I had started in Bejeweled because I enjoyed Bejeweled, and then I found out I could be a part of Plants vs. Zombies, and I was like, God damn right, yeah, this is great. Like I definitely believe that the places that I go and I work, it's part of the things that I'm passionate and like to do and play and like be a part of a studio or a company that like holds the same values that I do and cares about the same things that I do. So it's definitely like there's thought that goes into it and what matters to me.
I think for me, it's really just I don't like playing video games alone. So I really like the games where I can connect with other players, like an MMO or like a MOBA or an FPS like Siege. And all of these games are like that too, where you can just like connect and find other players. I think that has a really strong appeal to it too, from both sides. Yeah.
Yeah, to be honest, I think it's kind of like twofold. There's the company that you work for, and then there's the brand that you work on, right? Like, and in my case, I knew right from the beginning that I wanted to work for Ubisoft Montreal. Yeah, it is like, so from that perspective, I couldn't have been sad about a brand that I worked on. I've worked on tons of brands now at that studio. I spent a lot of rewarding time working with Justin. And that was especially awesome because Justin and I worked together on Assassin's Creed when he was a community manager. So to work underneath him on Rainbow was like, it was so relaxing because he did all the work.
You're welcome.
It was incredible, and yet so much glory. It was so good. Thanks for your question.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so in communities that continue to grow, especially after content patches like Operation Outbreak or Plains of Eidolon, how do you guys balance out like newcomers that come into the game and like their feedback on it, and then also the veterans that play and their feedback on the new patches and all that?
That's an incredible question.
That's a great question.
Oh, man, Plains of Eidolon was quite fun for noobs and veterans, but you just try and make decisions that can get everyone into the game in our case, and balancing that feedback really comes down to making sure that the newer players know that they can give feedback. Like, it's not like, just because you joined the party 5 years late doesn't mean we don't care about your opinion, because like, we're basically an anime at this point, right? And someone's like, oh, like in episode 210 they did this, and then some new player's like, well, I'm still 200 episodes behind. But like, your contribution still matters, so it's really just about making sure that that was one of the first times we did an in-game survey, and we put it for the news for everyone. So it was just making our access points as in your face as possible, which could have annoyed veterans, but it also allowed new players, in the specific case of Plains of Eidolon, to see that we can get your voice too, even if you're new and you feel like you're 5 years behind.
Yeah, I mean, a tweet or a Reddit post doesn't have your gamer score on it, so it is sometimes difficult to know if you are like a new player or old player, unless like you recognize the username. But I will say that all feedback is really important,
yep.
And there is a certain way in the community that does a certain amount of self-moderation. So if a thought is way off track, then people will kind of direct them into the right angle of like, no, this is the feedback we should actually be giving. But we also, I mean, a lot of the decisions in terms of like balancing and updates is really based on the actions in game and data that we see in game. So it's twofold: your feedback, but also data in game. So if we do see a piece of feedback that is way off, off from our data, then we'll still take that into consideration. But we need to make sure that both of those align, so that we're not like we're not just basing it off of one singular thought within the community.
And sometimes you just need to play an update like Plains of Eidolon with your brother like I did, who said he didn't even know there was a door with an open world. And then I'm like, oh my God. New players don't even know there's an open world. So.
All right, we got time for one more.
Hi. One question, maybe to all whoever feels he can answer that. Have you ever dealt, and how have you dealt with a situation where you had to maybe bring positive things, not only negative feelings down, but positive feelings? Because we had a few cases in the last few years where hype destroyed a few games. And have you ever dealt with that problem, or how did you deal with that problem if some people got too enthusiastic? Maybe, and
we do dev streams that are really unpolished, so people know never to expect anything. So we find by exactly by showing buggy work in progress, people know that that's it. So
I'm not familiar with this problem of people being too positive that we need to tone it down. No,
I'm sorry, you're
Give
a
me
little
that.
too happy. I think that the closest that I've worried about that is that somebody was like addicted to spending some well, I can talk about PopCap stuff because I'm not there anymore. It was a particular game that we had, and we could see that somebody was spending a lot of money, like where it was concerning us, and we were like, what do we do? Like, how have we done this? Because like specific individuals, and we ended up actually implementing some cooldown stuff into the game that was running on Facebook to like, hey, it was more that we were just worried that like, was it a kid with like a credit card? Was it something like that? And like, that's probably the closest to that problem that I'm like, oh yeah, sometimes you gotta like let people chill out. But like, if not, like we mostly celebrate. If somebody's super into something, we are just like, hey, everybody, look at how excited this person is! Isn't it great? And we highlight it in whatever way we can. And for the most part, it's always been it has been good, and it should be good, hopefully. Yep. Yeah.
All right, and with that, we are a little bit over time, so I want to thank these awesome panelists.
Thank you, Gabe.
Thank you, Gabe.
Yeah, thank you, Gabe.
Thank you, Gabe. Yeah.
Go, Gabe.